Why did it take decades to build medieval castles? You may not be aware of the reasons, but now I will reveal one of the secrets of history. You are a builder of a medieval castle. You start working on the construction site as a young man and finish as a gray-haired old man, and even then you only see the walls erected, but not the finished roof. This is exactly how things were with the construction of medieval castles, which grew for decades and sometimes even centuries. We are used to skyscrapers growing in a couple of years and bridges being built in months. But in the Middle Ages, every stone laid in the castle wall was the result of colossal labor that is difficult for modern people to even imagine. It was a battle not with the enemy, but with nature itself, time, and the laws of physics. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn why the construction of a simple stone fortification became a lifelong project for an entire generation, and what invisible forces slowed down the work that you never even suspected.
Otherwise the arch will fail. We understand, Master.
We need that cart unloaded now. More mortar on this section.
These arches are far too narrow. They will never bear the
What
weight.
if I told you that everything you knew about construction doesn't work here? We are used to the fact that any serious construction begins with detailed drawings and plans where every nail is specified. But in the Middle Ages, nothing of the sort existed. And this was the first and main break on the whole process. The main person on the construction site was not an architect in the modern sense, but a master mason or chief architect. He kept the entire plan for the future castle in his head. All calculations, proportions, and design decisions were based on his personal knowledge and experience. This master conveyed his instructions to the workers verbally, often using simple sketches on sand or a piece of parchment. There was no single set of documents that any builder could refer to. If the master fell ill or left, the work could come to a complete standstill. This approach meant that the project was constantly changing during the construction process. The Lord who commissioned the work could make changes, features of the terrain could be discovered, or new fortification ideas could emerge. Each such change required recalculations and slowed down the work.
Utilizing this design here.
Masons often use simple geometric principles rather than complex mathematical formulas. They worked with ropes, pegs, and simple measuring instruments. This method was reliable, but not particularly fast. Moreover, knowledge and secrets of craftsmanship were kept strictly confidential within guilds and cooperatives. Master masons were not interested in teaching their methods to everyone. This made each specialist unique and irreplaceable, but also a bottleneck for the entire project.
According to this, the weight will
In essence, the castle was not built according to a pre-approved plan, but was grown like a living organism. It adapted to conditions, changed, and developed along with the vision of its creator. It was a creative but very slow process. This method required the master to be constantly present at the site. He was simultaneously a designer, a foreman, and a quality engineer. Such a concentration of responsibility in one person inevitably led to a slowdown in the pace of work. The lack of drawings also meant that it was impossible to accurately calculate the required amount of materials in advance. They were delivered as needed, which created constant logistical problems and downtime. The construction site operated in a mode of constant improvisation. Do you think this flexible approach, where the plan can be changed on the fly, is more effective than the modern rigid system with drawings? Or did it just get in the way? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new research into the past. Are you ready to learn the shocking truth about the incredible journey each individual stone took before finally ending up in the wall of a medieval castle forever? Its long history did not begin on a noisy construction site at the foundation, but dozens or even hundreds of kilometers away in a remote quarry in the mountains. And this arduous journey was incredibly long, difficult, and costly in terms of time and resources. Each stone was the result of the labor of dozens of people and animals who did a tremendous job of extracting, processing, and delivering it. The stone did not appear on the construction site magically. Behind it were months of preparation and logistics, invisible to those who see only the finished wall, but critical to the very existence of that wall. For without stone, there is no castle, and without logistics, there is no stone at the construction site on time. First of all, qualified geologists had to find and evaluate suitable stone of the required quality. For massive foundations and basic rough masonry of walls, local, easily accessible rocks, limestone, sandstone, were used to minimize transportation costs. But for the finishing of facades, critical cornerstones, and decorative elements, sculptures, coats of arms, high-quality, durable, and aesthetically beautiful stone of a certain color was required, which often had to be transported from famous quarries hundreds of kilometers away. The quality of the stone determined the durability of the castle. Poor stone crumbled over decades, while good stone lasted for centuries. Therefore, saving on materials was a false economy, resulting in destruction and the need for repairs, which cost more than the initial use of high-quality stone. For this reason, customers did not skimp on the delivery of the best types of stone from reputable quarries. Stone extraction in the quarry was entirely manual labor without mechanization, pure muscle power. Experienced stonecutters methodically chipped away at the monolithic rock with iron wedges, heavy hammers, and pickaxes to create huge multi-ton cubic blocks. This exhausting process was not only extremely physically demanding, but also very slow, depending heavily on the strength and structure of the rock. Granite was mined for months, limestone for weeks. Working in a quarry was one of the most dangerous and unprestigious jobs. Landslides, injuries from heavy tools and stones, and lung diseases from stone dust killed quarry workers by the dozens, making this profession the lot of desperate poor people or convicts who had no choice and agreed to any job for a piece of bread. Then experienced stonecutters would shape these rough blocks weighing tons into a rough rectangular shape, right in the quarry, to significantly reduce the total weight during subsequent transportation, so as not to carry excess stone. Each block was carefully chiseled by hand by several skilled stonecutters over several days, removing irregularities and excess volume. Only after this preliminary processing on site was the stone finally ready to embark on its long and dangerous journey to the construction site, dozens of kilometers away along terrible roads. Processing at the quarry saved a ton of money on transportation. It was cheaper to haul a ton of processed stone than a ton and a half of unprocessed stone, so it made sense to do as much work as possible at the quarry, minimizing the weight of the load for transport, which was critical with primitive transportation. Transporting multi-ton blocks was the main costly logistical problem and headache of the Middle Ages. Roads were in terrible condition everywhere. In fact, they were just dirty, broken ruts without pavement, washed away by rain. Transporting multi-ton stone blocks weighing up to 5 tons on such primitive roads was a real engineering challenge and a logistical nightmare. The roads regularly required repair and clearing specifically for the passage of stone carts. The construction of a castle began with the construction of roads to it, without which the delivery of materials was impossible, which increased the time and budget by years, but was an inevitable necessity, as there was no alternative in the absence of a developed road network on a Roman scale.
Come on now, push!
The main means of transport for stone were heavy wooden carts with wide wheels, pulled by teams of oxen. Oxen were much stronger and more enduring than horses, and were anatomically better suited for transporting extreme weights over long distances. But they moved painfully slowly at the speed of a leisurely pedestrian, 3 km/h. A journey of several dozen kilometers in a straight line could actually take several days or even weeks with stops and overnight stays. Each wagon required a driver, protection from robbers, and a supply of feed for the animals. Transportation logistics were a complex operation that required calculating the route, time, weather, safety, provisions for people and fodder for oxen, which required experience in planning, Otherwise, the convoy would get stuck in the mud or be attacked, losing its precious cargo. If geography and luck allowed, it was wise to transport stone by water as much as possible on flat-bottomed river barges or sea vessels. This was the most efficient and cheapest way to transport large volumes of heavy cargo over long distances. However, it was completely dependent on the availability of navigable rivers nearby and the time of year, the navigation season.
Look at those hills.
Water transport carried dozens of times more cargo with the same pulling power, which made it ideal when available. One barge replaced hundreds of carts, saving enormous amounts of money and time. But waterways were rarely accessible, and most castles were built far from navigable rivers on strategic heights, which ruled out water delivery and forced reliance on slow land transport. The castle construction site itself also required perfect internal logistics and space organization. The arriving stones had to be carefully unloaded without damage, sorted by size and purpose, and delivered to the right section of the growing wall at the right time. To lift heavy blocks to the height of the walls, primitive wooden cranes and winches were used, powered exclusively by the muscle power of dozens of people pulling ropes. Lifting a single block to the top could take an hour of work by a team, which slowed down construction and required careful coordination. A crane stoppage meant a stoppage for the masons waiting for the material, which was a waste of money and time. So the logistics of materials within the construction site were just as critical as delivery from afar. Unpredictable weather conditions constantly disrupted plans. During the autumn rainy season, roads turned into impassable muddy swamps, and deliveries of materials were completely halted for weeks or months as carts got stuck.
No new stone shipments will arrive until the weather...
In winter, rivers froze over, completely halting river navigation until spring, and deep snow made land transport impossible or extremely dangerous. The construction season lasted 6 to 8 months a year, with the rest of the time being idle, which stretched the construction of the castle over decades instead of years. If the work had been carried out year-round, the climate dictated the pace of construction, not the ambitions of the customer, forcing them to accept the laws of nature and plan for seasonality. Thus, every single stone in the castle wall is the materialized result of the hard work of hundreds of people and animals and weeks, or even months of travel from the quarry to the masonry. When we look at the majestic castle today with admiration, we see not just a beautiful stone wall, but a titanic multi-year logistical operation involving the coordination of thousands of people, frozen in stone. But even the perfectly organized logistics of stone delivery were completely powerless in the face of another critical necessity: binding these tons of stones together into a monolith with a strong mortar. In the next chapter, you will learn how the creation of glue for the castle, lime mortar, posed one of the greatest technical challenges for medieval builders.
Put your back into it, left.
And you've definitely never heard of this unique secret. The castle was not built by faceless slaves, but by a community of highly skilled professionals, each of whom took pride in their craftsmanship, and they had their own secret language, which we can still see today: Masonic signs. If you look closely at the walls of many medieval castles, you can see symbols carved into individual stones. These are not random scratches, but the personal marks of the masons. Each master or guild had its own unique mark. These marks serve several important functions. First of all, it was a system of accounting and quality control. The master put his mark on the stone he had worked on, showing that the work was done and ready for inspection. The chief architect accepted the work and calculated the payment based on these marks. It was a medieval form of a certificate of completion. If a stone was poorly worked, it was always clear who was responsible. This system made it possible to hire a large number of freelance masons from different regions for construction projects. Each had their own style and techniques, but the mark served as a universal passport of quality. The Lord who commissioned the work paid not for hours worked, but for a specific quantity and quality of processed stones. These marks were also a source of pride. The Mason left his mark on history by putting his name, albeit in encrypted form, into the eternal stonework. It was a kind of artist's signature on his work. For historians and archaeologists, these marks are a real treasure trove of information. They can be used to trace the migration routes of construction teams, determine how many craftsmen worked on a site, and even roughly calculate the pace of construction. The marks were simple and easily recognizable. Crosses, arrows, geometric figures. They had to be easy to carve into stone and did not require artistic talent. The main thing was that they were unique within a single construction site. This system reveals the social structure of medieval construction. It was not an anthill of faceless workers, but a complex organism consisting of professionals who valued their reputation. They were the elite of the working world. Thus, each stone not only traveled a long way from the quarry, but also carries the personal history of its creator. The castle wall is not a monolith, but a mosaic assembled from thousands of individual works and marked with hundreds of unique signatures.
Those dress stones raised to the 3rd level immediately. You heard the master.
What if I showed you an imaginary time machine and we looked inside a busy medieval castle construction site in the midst of work? We would be shocked to see that the castle, which seems to us modern people to be a completely stone monolith, was in fact densely surrounded on the outside and deeply permeated on the inside by wood, both temporary and permanent. The successful construction of massive stone walls required a colossal, unimaginable amount of wood of various species, and its harvesting, processing, and delivery were a separate, large-scale parallel task, comparable in volume to the stonework.
Leave that stone up quickly now.
Without wood, it was impossible to build a stone castle, a paradox incomprehensible to modern man, accustomed to metal and concrete, but obvious to the medieval builder, who knew that stone cannot lift or hold itself without wooden scaffolding, mechanisms, and formwork, which are critical for every stage of construction, from the foundation to the roof. First and foremost, complex scaffolding was built in huge quantities from durable wood, oak and pine. These massive, complex, and cumbersome multi-tiered structures completely encircled the growing walls around the entire perimeter of the castle, gradually rising higher and higher as the castle grew in height. Thousands of thick logs cut down in the surrounding forests and processed by carpenters were irretrievably lost in their creation. The scaffolding was a temporary wooden twin of the stone castle, repeating its contours and scale. From a distance, the construction site looked like a wooden castle surrounding a stone core, which impressed contemporaries with the scale of the enterprise and the amount of wood used, turning the surrounding area into a desert devoid of forests for miles around the construction site. The scaffolding had to be incredibly strong and structurally stable in order to safely support the simultaneous weight of dozens of workers, tons of materials, stones, mortar, tools, and equipment on each tier. It was laboriously assembled from logs and planks and then dismantled several times over the many years of construction as sections of the wall were completed. It was constant, cyclical, and very physically demanding work for the teams of carpenters. Assembly, rearrangement, disassembly, reassembly higher up, an endless cycle. The collapse of scaffolding was a disaster that killed dozens of workers and halted construction for months. So great attention was paid to its strength. It was better to err on the side of caution with excess material than to lose people and time due to savings on logs, which was a false economy that turned into tragedy. The second most important and voluminous consumer of wood on the construction site was lifting mechanisms for vertical movement of loads. Huge treadwheel cranes with a human treadwheel inside, reminiscent of a hamster wheel, massive winches with drums, Block and rope systems and gates all were made entirely of solid wood with a minimum of metal parts. Without these wooden machines and mechanisms, it would have been physically impossible to lift multi-ton stone blocks tens of meters up to the masons using only human strength. Cranes were the heart of the construction site. Their breakdown completely paralyzed the work, so carpenters constantly monitored them, repairing and lubricating them, preventing downtime that was critical for deadlines and budgets, which depended on the continuous lifting of materials onto the walls for masonry.
Don't stop now, keep turning.
Inside the supposedly stone castle, there were also a huge number of permanent wooden structures, invisible from the outside. Massive load-bearing beams between floors, roof trusses, wooden floors on top of stone, heavy oak doors, window frames, and shutters. All of this required high-quality, durable, and professionally processed wood without defects. The castle was deceptively stone only on the outside for protection, but in many ways critically wooden on the inside for the functionality of life. Without wood and stone, it was impossible to live, only to exist in a cold, damp cave. So wood made stone habitable, insulating, isolating, and structuring the interior space into rooms and floors. A huge, incalculable amount of wood was constantly used as fuel for various needs. For the continuous burning of lime in special kilns, necessary for the preparation of a binding solution between the stones, special kilns of enormous size were required, which worked around the clock for months, consuming firewood. They literally consumed entire groves of trees, mercilessly turning them into the heat and warmth necessary for the chemical welding of stones into a monolith through lime mortar. Without lime, there was no mortar. Without mortar, there was no masonry. Without firewood, there was no lime. The chain of dependencies made wood a critical resource, without which stone construction came to a complete halt, turning stones into a pile of unrelated cobblestones incapable of becoming a wall. Smithies, where skilled blacksmiths continuously made and repaired worn metal tools for stonecutters, also urgently needed a constant, uninterrupted supply of charcoal for their forges. Every iron nail, every steel wedge for splitting stone, every pickaxe and chisel tip was painstakingly forged in the hellish fire produced by burning wood turned into charcoal. Without the continuous work of blacksmiths repairing tools, construction would have stopped immediately after a week. Blunt tools cannot be used to work hard stone. They broke and required constant sharpening and repair, which made blacksmiths as critical to construction as masons, although their contribution was invisible in the finished wall. But without them, that wall would never have been built.
Steady on the left.
The logistics of harvesting and delivering wood to the construction site were no easier, and often even more difficult than the logistics of heavy stone. The wood had to be cut down with axes in the surrounding area, cleared of branches and bark, sawn into logs of the required length, and then transported to the construction site kilometers away. This was often done rationally in winter, when frozen rivers could be used as ice roads and sled tracks through the snow for transport.
Push harder. Steady.
Floating logs down rivers in the spring was a common method of delivery. The wood floated by itself under the force of the current, saving on draft power, but requiring the control of rafters to prevent jams and the loss of logs carried out to sea or stuck on shoals, which was a loss of valuable resources and money for the customer.
Now.
The large-scale, multi-year construction of a large castle inevitably led to the complete and catastrophic deforestation of the surrounding area for tens of kilometers. The forest, which for centuries had been a source of fuel, building materials and game for the local population, was ruthlessly and quickly cut down during the years of construction. This radically changed the landscape and fragile ecology of the region for many decades to come. Soil erosion without tree roots, the disappearance of animals, climate change. The castle was an ecological disaster for the surrounding area. The price of grandeur was measured in destroyed forests, in impoverished land, unable to recover quickly without intervention, and local residents suffered from a shortage of firewood and game caused by construction that enriched the feudal lord, but ruined the peasants by depriving them of forest resources. Thus, behind the impressive stone power of every medieval castle lies the invisible ghost of an entire destroyed forest covering hundreds of hectares. Without this invisible wooden skeleton of forests and fuel from firewood, not a single heavy stone would have been lifted to a height and neatly laid by masons. How many trees do you think were irretrievably lost in the construction of one average castle? Thousands or tens of thousands of trunks. In the next practical chapter, we will learn in detail how medieval builders coped with the main unpredictable enemy of any open-air construction project: capricious weather that stopped work. Binding stones together was no less important a task than extracting and transporting them. Medieval cement, or lime mortar, was the glue that turned a pile of stones into an indestructible wall. The process of making it was long, laborious, and required special skill. The main component of the mortar was lime. It was obtained by burning limestone or chalk in special furnaces called lime kilns. This process required maintaining a very high temperature for several days. The lime kilns were large structures that continuously consumed huge amounts of firewood. There was always a lot of work going on around these kilns. Some workers brought in stones, others brought fuel, and still others monitored the fire. After burning, quicklime was obtained, a very caustic and unstable substance. To make it suitable for construction, the lime had to be slaked, that is, mixed with water. This process was accompanied by a violent reaction with the release of heat. The slaked lime was then mixed with sand and water to produce a mortar. The quality of the mortar depended directly on the proportions and purity of the components. Good sand without clay and impurities was highly valued. The secrets of preparing the perfect mortar were passed down from master to master. Sometimes additional ingredients were added to the mixture for strength, such as crushed ceramics. The quality of the mortar determined the durability of the entire structure. The process of lime mortar setting was very slow. It gained strength not through the evaporation of water, like modern cement, but as a result of a chemical reaction with carbon dioxide from the air. This process could take months or even years. That is why medieval walls were built very slowly, laying no more than a few rows of stones at a time. It was necessary to allow the lower layers to set and gain strength before loading them with the weight of the upper rows. Any haste could lead to collapse. The preparation of mortar was a continuous process throughout the construction season. The huge mixing pits where the components were mixed were as important an element of the construction site as the walls themselves. Without this simple but capricious material, the castle would have remained a pile of stones. Thus, each joint between the stones is the result of a complex and unhurried alchemical process. The builders did not simply lay the stones, they waited patiently for the chemical reactions to make their work eternal.
Move that timber now!
Ready to find out what kind of metropolis grew up around the construction site? The construction of the castle was such a large-scale project that a whole temporary city grew up around it for decades. Hundreds and sometimes thousands of people of various professions lived, worked, and interacted in the city. The core of this city was made up of skilled craftsmen, bricklayers, carpenters, blacksmiths, roofers. They were the elite of the construction world. They were often independent craftsmen who traveled from one large construction site to another. The craftsmen were surrounded by their apprentices and journeymen. These were young people who underwent many years of training to one day become craftsmen themselves. The apprenticeship system ensured the continuity of knowledge and skills.
See how the lime takes the water.
The vast majority were unskilled workers. They did the hardest work, digging ditches, carrying stones, mixing mortar, and turning the wheels of cranes. Often, peasants were forced to do this work as a part of their feudal obligations. There was a strict hierarchy on the construction site. At the top was the master builder, who was obeyed by the masters of individual specialties. They in turn led their teams, consisting of apprentices and ordinary workers. An entire infrastructure was required to support the life of this city. Temporary dwellings, canteens, breweries, and even small markets appeared around the construction site. The castle fed not only itself, but also the entire surrounding area, creating demand for food and services. In addition to builders, other specialists were also constantly present here. Carriers providing logistics, coal miners supplying fuel for forges and furnaces, merchants bringing tools and provisions. It was a complex social and economic organism. Life in such a settlement was subject to the strict rhythm of the construction season. From spring to autumn, work was in full swing from dawn to dusk. In winter, most of the workers dispersed to their homes, and the city practically died out until the following spring. The constant gathering of large numbers of people in one place also created problems. It was necessary to maintain order and discipline. To this end, special rules were often introduced and overseers were appointed. Thus, the construction of the castle was not just a technical task, but a complex organizational one. It was necessary not only to erect walls, but also to manage a huge team of people, providing them with everything they needed for life and work. What do you think was the most important profession on the construction site? In the next chapter, we will look at the tools used to erect these gigantic structures. Medieval builders did not have excavators, concrete mixers, or tower cranes at their disposal. Each of their tools was an extension of the human hand and was powered by muscle power. It was this dependence on manual labor that was one of the main reasons for the slow pace of construction. The main tools of a mason were a hammer, chisel, pickaxe, and square. With their help, he transformed a shapeless stone block into a perfectly fitted building block. This work required not so much strength as precision, patience, and long hours of monotonous labor. Carpenters used axes, saws, planes, and drills. Processing huge logs for floor beams or rafters was hard and painstaking work. Each joint was cut by hand to ensure a perfect fit. Simple but effective tools were used to check the verticality and horizontality of the masonry. A plumb line, a rope with a weight, allowed perfectly straight walls to be erected. A level, which was a wooden frame with a plumb line, ensured that the rows were horizontal. The most impressive mechanisms on the construction site were the lifting cranes. Most often, these were cranes with a large squirrel wheel. Workers climbed inside this wheel and, stepping on it like a ladder, set the entire mechanism in motion. Such a crane could lift loads weighing up to several tons, but it did so very slowly. Each lift required the coordinated work of several people and took a considerable amount of time. The speed of the entire construction was limited by the productivity of these wooden giants. Levers, rollers, and winches were used to move heavy loads on the ground. It took the efforts of an entire team of workers to move a heavy stone block from its place and drag it to the wall. Every meter was achieved with great difficulty. Blacksmiths were the heart of the tool industry. They constantly forged new tools to replace broken ones and sharpen the dull blades of pickaxes and teeth. Without their continuous work, the entire construction would have come to a standstill. The lack of mechanization meant that labor productivity was very low by modern standards. The amount of work that a single excavator operator can do in an hour today required a whole day's work by dozens of diggers in the Middle Ages. Every element of the castle is a monument to human perseverance. It was created not by the power of machines, but by the strength and endurance of thousands of people who, with the help of the simplest tools, slowly, step by step, reclaim space from nature for their stone giant. The construction of the castle was one of the most expensive undertakings of its time, comparable in cost to modern space programs. The enormous expenses for materials, tools, and labor turned the construction into a real financial abyss. Often it was the lack of money rather than technical difficulties that was the main reason for the long construction period. The main source of funding was the income of the lord who commissioned the project. He spent the income from his lands, taxes collected from peasants and townspeople, and duties on the construction. However, these funds were often insufficient to cover all expenses. The cost of materials was enormous. High-quality imported stone and large logs for flooring were particularly expensive. Added to this were huge transportation costs, which sometimes exceeded the cost of the materials themselves. The largest expense was the wages of skilled craftsmen. Experienced bricklayers and carpenters were highly valued and demanded regular payment for their work. Keeping hundreds of craftsmen on the construction site required constant financial injections. When the lord ran out of money, construction simply stopped. Sometimes the construction site would lie dormant for several months, and sometimes for years, waiting for the treasury to be replenished. During this time, some of the buildings could fall into disrepair, and the workers would disperse.
The tower remains unfinished.
To find funds, the lords resorted to various methods. They could introduce new taxes, take huge loans from wealthy merchants or moneylenders, and sometimes simply go on a military campaign in the hope of rich spoils. Each such step was a risk. Sometimes construction was carried out in fits and starts. In one year, part of the wall could be built, then there would be a break for several years to accumulate funds, and then a tower would be erected. This is why many castles look heterogeneous, combining different architectural styles. The cost of construction could completely ruin even the richest feudal lord. History knows many examples of lords losing their lands and titles because they miscalculated their financial strength and got involved in overly ambitious construction projects. The economy at that time was unstable. A poor harvest, war, or epidemic could drastically reduce income and freeze construction indefinitely. Financial planning was extremely difficult, and the project was constantly at risk of failure. Thus, each castle is not only a fortress, but also a financial report of its era. Its walls and towers tell a story not only of fortification, but also of the economic opportunities, ambitions, and often financial failures of its creators.
The granaries are empty, my lord. We cannot feed them.
We must see the project finished, regardless of the cost.
What choice do I have?
Even with skilled workers, materials, and money, there was one factor that no one could control: the weather. The construction cycle in the Middle Ages was completely dependent on the seasons. Work could only be done during the short period from spring to autumn, which stretched construction out over decades. The main enemy of builders was rain. Not only did it create mud on the construction site, hindering movement and transportation, but it was also destructive to fresh lime mortar. A heavy downpour could simply wash the unhardened mortar out of the joints, ruining all the work. Because of this vulnerability of the mortar, stone masonry had to be stopped in rainy weather. The workers were engaged in other activities. They cut stones under a canopy and prepared wooden structures. But the construction of walls was stopped, slowing down the overall pace. In the fall, with the arrival of the first frosts, construction stopped completely. Water that got into the mortar expanded when it froze and could tear the masonry from the inside, creating cracks. It was impossible to build in the cold, as this threatened to compromise the strength of the entire structure.
Cold one.
Winter was a dead season for bricklayers and carpenters. The construction site froze, covered with snow. Most of the free craftsmen went home or looked for work in cities where they could work indoors. This meant that every year the construction season was very short, at best from April to October. For almost half the year, the castle stood unfinished, exposed to wind, rain, and snow. This did not contribute to the durability of the structures. In the spring, work began anew. It was necessary to clear the site, repair structures damaged during the winter, and reassemble the craftsmen. Every year, construction essentially started from scratch. which required time and organizational effort.
Easy now, set it down easy.
Seasonality also affected logistics. Spring and autumn mud made the roads impassable. Navigation on rivers was also only possible during certain months. This dependence on the weather made any long-term planning virtually impossible. No one could predict whether the summer would be rainy or the fall would come early. Builders simply tried to do as much as possible in the short time that nature allowed them. As a result, the construction period was measured not in days or months, but in seasons. A project that required, say, 5 full years of work, in reality stretched out over 10 to 12 calendar years due to long winter downtime. When a lord laid the first stone in the foundation of his castle, he understood perfectly well that he would most likely not see it completed. Construction was so long that it became the work of an entire dynasty. The castle was built by the grandfather, continued by the son, and finished by the grandson. This completely changed the perception of time and the purpose of construction. The castle was not just a home or a fortress for one person, it was a symbol of stability, power, and longevity for the entire family. Each new ruler contributed something of his own to the project. He could add a new tower, strengthen the walls, or build more comfortable living quarters. The castle grew and changed along with the dynasty, reflecting its tastes, ambitions, and financial capabilities. This approach explains why many castles look like a mix of different architectural styles. Early Norman masonry can sit next to later Gothic elements. This isn't a mistake, but a chronicle of construction frozen in stone. The transfer of a construction project by inheritance also created problems. The heir might have other priorities, such as waging war or building a cathedral. In this case, the construction of the castle could be frozen for decades. Sometimes the chief master builder would change. After his departure, the new master could bring his own ideas and techniques. He could be critical of his predecessor's work and insist on alterations, which further delayed the process. Construction that was meant to last for generations needed a special approach to quality. The builders knew they were building for the ages. Every stone and every beam had to be laid with the utmost care to make sure the structure would last. For the people working on the construction site, it was also a lifelong endeavor. Fathers brought their sons to the construction site as apprentices, and they continued their father's work, laboring on the same walls. Continuity was not only found among the clients, but also among the builders.
Watch the beam above.
This factor turned the castle into something more than just a building. It became the center of life for the entire region for many decades. Its construction provided jobs, shaped settlements, and became the main topic of conversation. Ultimately, it was this unhurried, multi-generational approach that ensured the incredible longevity of the castles. They were built without haste, with the understanding that they were a legacy for future generations. And this legacy outlived its creators by many centuries. We can see that the long construction of medieval castles was not caused by the incompetence of the builders, but by a whole complex of problems that were unsolvable for that era. The lack of standardized blueprints, primitive logistics, dependence on manual labor, and the vagaries of the weather, as well as a constant shortage of funding, all turned construction into a marathon lasting several decades. Clear by sundown. Every castle that has survived to this day is a monument to incredible human perseverance and patience. It tells a story not only of wars and kings, but also of nameless craftsmen who slowly, stone by stone, erected these eternal structures, knowing that they were building them not for themselves, but for their grandchildren. What other secrets of history would you like to uncover? Suggest topics for future videos that you would be interested in seeing on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next journeys into the past.